Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome to another video in my mega product design course for beginners. If you're someone who struggles to solve problems, if you're someone who's getting started in design, if you're someone who doesn't know how to make design decisions, I'm about to change your life. Welcome to a two-part series where I'm going to show you how to use ChatGPT to solve an entire problem statement from scratch. This is going to be super fun, super interesting, and I'm going to take a problem statement by myself and I'm going to solve it using ChatGPT. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, before I get started, I want to quickly take a few seconds talking about learnproduct.design. It's a guide that I released a couple of weeks ago, and it's the ultimate guide to help you become the designer the industry wants. You can come down here to the chapter section and check out everything that I'm going to be talking about and I'm going to be teaching. I'm going to be releasing chapters on a regular basis, so if you're super interested and serious about learning product design, highly recommend you check this out. All right, now let's get back to the video. All right, now before I get started, a couple of disclaimers, a couple of important things to talk about. So it's all about knowing how to use ChatGPT the right way. Now, the best way to do this is to ask the right questions. Asking the right questions is the key to everything, because when you work as a product designer, you will be working a lot with your product managers, and knowing how to ask the right questions, knowing what questions to ask and get answers to that is super important. And if you have a very solid thought process, then you will be able to ask good questions. So you should use ChatGPT and practice so that you will understand how to ask the right questions to get the answers that you want. All right, so that's the first one. The next one is challenge the answers ChatGPT provides. Now, through the entire video, I'm going to show you that a lot of things that ChatGPT says makes no sense or is giving incomplete information, right? So it's your job to sort of challenge that and try to get more clarity than it actually gives you. All right, don't just blindly take everything in. Make sure that you filter the answers ChatGPT gives you, because it will lack context and sometimes you need to provide it with additional context if you want a really good answer. So make sure to filter all the unnecessary information. Seek validation and direction. Don't look for answers. Sometimes it's fine if you want direct answers, but even if it does give you, sit down, validate it, and consider your use case, consider your personas, or else you will become a slave of the tool. And finally, depending on the tool for too much makes you less smart. ChatGPT is supposed to make you smarter and more efficient and help you build a thought process. But if you just go looking for answers and you don't ask the right questions, it's going to make you less smart, and that's really bad for you. So now let's jump into the problem statement. Okay, so I have a very simple prompt over here. Design an experience that allows travelers to rent lockers in train stations for a short period of time. Now, this is such a simple prompt, but it lacks so much information. And as I use ChatGPT to go into further details, you're going to see how complex it can get. Now, you want to spend the first part just focusing on understanding context, getting information, figuring out what questions to ask, right? So what I did is I went to ChatGPT and I just threw this prompt into ChatGPT and I saw all the answers it gave me. So here I'm in ChatGPT. I said, design an experience that allows travelers to rent lockers in train stations for a short period. That's it. I didn't give it more context because I want to start from something vague and then get into more clarity, right? So here is an outline of the potential experience for travelers to rent lockers in train stations for a short period of time, right? So it sort of gave me an experience. Now, the most important thing here to understand is that it's not telling me that I need to use a mobile app, right? Sometimes not everything has to be a mobile app, right? Sometimes an experience can be a non-digital experience as well, right? Without using a mobile phone, right? So let's quickly try to understand what it told me. So it says, set up a kiosk or a vending machine near the train station or lobby that allows them to rent lockers. The kiosk should have a touchscreen display. Travelers can select the size of the locker, pay for the rental, receive a Unicode to unlock the locker, place the row of lockers in a convenient location near the platforms, all right. Allow travelers to choose the length of time they want to rent the locker for, with options ranging from a few hours to a few days. As you can see, I'm getting some information and some ideas over here. The kiosk should automatically calculate the cost of the rental depending on the length of the time selected. All right. Consider offering a loyalty program or discounts for frequent users. The train station staff or security personnel should be available to assist the travelers with any issues, and to ensure safety and security of travelers' belongings, consider implementing security measures, etc. Right? Now, we are designers. For us, things like, security personnel, train station staff are not really important, but it's nice to think about these things and edge cases as well. But for us, the entire core experience of using the product is a lot more important. So once ChatGPT gave me this, I put all these into Figma and then I pointed out certain questions that I had. So let's look at that. All right, so let's look at the first point, right? Set up a kiosk or a vending machine near the train station entrance or a lobby that allows travelers to rent the lockers. The kiosk should have a touchscreen display where travelers can select the size of the locker they need, pay for the rental, and receive a unique code to unlock the locker, right? Now, when I read this, I have a few questions in mind, right? Can it be reserved beforehand using a digital solution, right? Because I'm assuming that there's going to be a lot of rush and people will have to stand in queues at a kiosk, which is going to waste time, right? So can it be reserved beforehand using a digital solution? Now, I don't know what the answer is, right? But we're just asking questions, right? Then it says that the travelers can select the size of the locker, right? So maybe I should ask the question, how many sizes of lockers should there be, right? I don't know. How do you make that decision? How many sizes, right? Then pay for the rental and receive a unique code, right? So why prepayment? Why not post payment, right? Why not after that, right? The thing is, we don't know the answers. It's just about asking the right questions, all right? Next, moving on. Each locker should have a keypad or a smart lock that can be unlocked using the code provided at the kiosk, right? Now, one of the questions I have is, what if the user forgets the passcode, right? What are the measures that we can take so that the user always has access to the passcode no matter what, right? Now, the thing is, we still don't know what the user flow is or how it's going to work, right? How does this smart lock actually work, right? It's a little unclear right now. Then moving on, allow travelers to choose the length of time they want to rent the locker for, with options ranging from a few hours to a few days, right? And how many is few days, right? Is it 2 days or 5 days? I don't know. The kiosk should automatically calculate the cost of the rental depending on the length of the time selected, all right? So my questions were, should there be a maximum limit, right? So when I say limit, I'm like, when you say a few hours to a few days, how many maximum days, right? Is that in terms of hours or days? I don't know, right? Is the pricing solely based on the length of time, right? I believe that the size also is a factor. Right, so bigger the size of the locker, the more is going to cost, right? Then can you pay by cash, right? I don't know, can you pay by cash or not? Because sometimes maybe you don't have your phone, you don't have your debit card, credit card, maybe whatever it is, right? Sometimes you might want to pay with cash, right? Can you really pay with cash, right? How does the payment system really work, all right? So all of these questions are still not answered over here. And then finally, we have other open questions are like, what are the items that people might want to store, right? This is more about understanding the user personas, okay? What period is defined as a short-term period, right? Like, this is pretty much similar to this question. What can be designed? What is the maximum limit, right? The same thing is can be put across in a different way, where we can ask what period is defined as a short-term period, right? And I think the most important thing is, who are these travelers, right? What are the use cases they would use this for, right? And understanding, more about the user personas is super important, right? So what I did was I went to ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT, who would be the perfect target users of this service, right? And it gave us a couple of options, right? So the target users of this would be travelers who need a secure place to store their belongings while traveling. Now, this is quite obvious. It is pretty obvious that people want a secure place, right? But why do they need a secure place, right? So let's look at a couple of examples, right? Tourists who are exploring the city and don't want to store their luggage with them all the day. Valid point, but I believe that there are other ways that this is being solved. Business travelers who need to store their luggage while attending meetings or events, all right? Commuters who need a place to store their luggage while they are at work. This is very similar to, the tourists or business travelers, right? Students or backpackers who are traveling on a budget and need a cheap place to store their belongings, right? So it's given us 4 examples, right? But in essence, for me, they just look like 1 or 2 core examples. So if I come back to Figma and come over here, I sort of put them into 3 categories, right? Tourists who are exploring the city and don't want to carry luggage with them, all right? And business travelers who need to store the luggage while attending business meetings, right? At a top level, these 2 are a little different from each other, although they have the very similar use case. I probably will remove this one, right? So I think this is why somebody would sort of use their app, right? Now, coming back to ChatGPT, I asked ChatGPT, can you draft user personas for the above target users? All right. Now, let's look at these in detail. Sophia is a tourist visiting a city for the first time. She's staying in a hotel and doesn't want to leave her luggage in the room while she's out exploring the city. She uses a locker rental service to store her luggage. Jack is a business traveler who is attending a conference in a different city. He needs a place to store his luggage while he's attending meetings and events throughout the day. Right? Emma is a student who is traveling on a budget. She is staying in a hostel and doesn't have a lot of space to store her belongings. She uses a locker rental service to store her luggage. Right? Now, to be very honest, all of these sort of feel the exact same to me, right? Most of these have the pretty similar use case. But let's see if we can be a little bit more concrete and try to come up with really core differences between these personas. Now, I also went and asked it to suggest a few more, as you can see over here, but all of these pretty much just, were the same things, right? It was written in a different format. The most important thing here when you're writing down user personas is to be very clear about the core different use cases, situations, needs, right? If you find any similarity, then it's not two different personas, right? One persona has to be very different from the other. Something needs to be different. Okay, so now I've taken a couple of these personas from ChatGPT and I've tried to, make sense of it. So let me give you an example. So the first one is, Sophia is a tourist visiting a new city for the very first time. She's staying in a hostel, all right, and doesn't want to leave her luggage in the room while she's out exploring the city. Now, it's important to understand the current behavior of users, right? Now, most of the hostels, or pretty much all hostels, they do have personal lockers, and so it is safe to keep it there, right? Only you will have access to the locker. There are locks and that you can bring itself, or sometimes they're provided by the hostels, right? And hostels also allow the guests to store their luggage in a common area post checkout. A lot of times checkout is from 10 a.m. in the morning to 11 a.m. and things like that. So you might want to store your things because you might have a flight or you might have a train to catch later on during the day, right? So you want to have a common place to keep all that, right? Now, so that means that this problem is already solved. But then Sophia could still use for a core use case, right? And the core use case here has important items that need to be stored. Hence, safety is a big concern, right? Let's say you're carrying around with a lot of jewelry, you're carrying around with your documents, you're carrying out with some important, items like your laptops and stuff, right? And if you believe the hostel is not a safe place, you can definitely keep it in the lockers. So the core use case or reason is safety, right? Safety is the main factor over here, even though there are ways to currently store it. All right. Now, the other thing that I've done is I've also written down percentage of my core target users, right? And all of this is assumption over here, right? I am assuming that 50% of my users are going to fall into this category, all right? Now, moving forward, we have Jack. Now, Jack is a business traveler who is attending a conference in a different city, all right? He needs a place to store his luggage and while he's attending his meetings and events during the day, right? Now, here, I would not say differentiating factor, I would say core use case, right? So, now, in Jack's case, the core use case for using it is he's staying for less than 12 hours in the same city. It's not about safety. It's not about security. It's just that he needs to attend this conference or a meeting and probably he has a big suitcase with him that he needs to store somewhere, right? So for him, a short-term period is what is the core use case in this case, right? And I'm guessing percentage of users is 30%. Now, this will totally depend on which city it is in, right? If it's a tourist city, then maybe this, could be a little less, right? But if it's more of like a metropolitan or a busy city, right? Then there might be a lot of companies over there. There might be a lot of travelers and businessmen and meetings that happen in that city, right? So that's that. Now, coming to another one, right? Sam is a backpacker who's traveling through multiple cities and doesn't want to carry around his backpack. He uses a locker rental service to store his backpack while he's out exploring the city and then picks up when he's ready to move to the next destination, right? So here, the core use case, right, is that, or maybe I'm going to say user scenario over here is that the user is staying in multiple cities, right? He's traveling through multiple cities and doesn't want to carry his backpack with him all the time. He uses a locker rental service to store his backpack while he's entering. Now, to be very honest, this is pretty much very similar to, Sophia's use case, right? It's not really a big deal. Even though here, Sam's core use case is not security. He just needs a place to keep it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this one, all right? And I'm going to probably make this, maybe 70%, or maybe this is going to be 30%, and I can bump this up to like 70%. right? Now this totally depends on which city it is, right? But we have some assumption to proceed forward, right? Now another interesting thing that we can talk about over here is what are the things that Sophia would, might want to store, right? So in this case, items to store, let's say would be cash, could be jewelry, could be and then documents, right? Anything, right? Now in this case, Jack's probably let's say items to store are going to be suitcase, right? Now maybe suitcase also could be an example over here. That's absolutely fine. So now that we have this, we can sort of get into understanding more about how the whole service or system works, right? Because we have a couple of questions that we have, right? We sort of wrote those down, and I'm sure these are going to be addressed in the next part. We also have user persona, so we clearly know who we are sort of solving for, right? So I came to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, hey, can you generate a user flow? Right now, I'm not going to read this entire thing. I'm going to take you directly to Figma, and I'm going to question each of those things that ChatGPT said and all the questions that I had for it, because a lot of these things made no sense. So ChatGPT is assuming that there is no mobile app, and all of this is happening with that kiosk, right? And that is the basis. So that's fine. Let's just proceed. Now, the first step is that it says the traveler arrives at the train station and sees the kiosk or vending machine for the locker rental service. Now, I'm just going to assume kiosk and not worry about this vending machine, because I don't know how this vending machine works or what it is. But a kiosk is a lot more straightforward because everybody has used it before, right? Now, one of the questions I had was repeating from the original part is, can there be a solution without a kiosk, right? Because this might lead to, very long queues, right? Because there might be so many people in a busy train station, and why do you want people to stand in a queue just for it, right? Can there be a better way of doing it, right? So maybe I'm going to ask a follow-up thing over here is, can we have a system of reserving a locker, right? Can we do that somehow? I don't know. Maybe not. Okay, moving on to the next one, right? So the traveler approaches the kiosk and selects the size of the locker they need and the length of time they want to rent it for, right? Now, the questions I had here is it going to be on a per hour basis or a combination of hours, right? The length of time, do you select, like 5 hours, or do you select, up to 8 hours? How does that work? I don't know how to make that decision, but I have a question, right? And the next one is how many sizes, right? Select the size of the locker, right? I don't know how many sizes we need to have. Now, the right answer here is actually to look at your user personas, right? Now, some of these answers, we can get the answers to these, ourselves. Considering our types of users, we can go ahead and decide what are the sizes, because if we know what are the items that they want to sort of deposit over here, depending on the use case, we will know what would be the sizes of it, right? But for now, this is just a question that I have. All right, let's move on. So I've selected a size, I've selected the duration, and the traveler pays for rental using cash, credit card, or a mobile payment app, right? Now, one of the questions I had here is, why do we have to do prepayment, right? Maybe a deposit works instead, right? Why not do post payment, right? Why not pay at the end of the service, right? Now, I don't know which is the right answer, right? Now, these are just questions, right? And I'm also assuming UPI, NFC, Apple and Google Pay also work. I'm just going to delete this because that's not relevant at the moment, right? Perfect. So I've paid for it, and now the kiosk generates a unique code and displays it on the screen. Okay, and this is obviously the kiosk screen. The traveler writes down the code or takes a picture of it. All right. Now, this is not a secure solution, right? Because other people can easily see it on the screen, and this can cause problems. It's quite obvious, right? And what if the user forgets the code or loses the code, right? What do you do then? If this question is coming up again and again and again, right? So is there a better way to solve this? Maybe, I don't know. Now, the traveler has now the unique code. The traveler locates the row of lockers and finds the available locker of the size they've selected. Now, here, ChatGPT is saying that the user has to find an available locker, right? But I think that makes no sense, right? The kiosk should automatically provide the locker number, right? I think that makes a lot more sense. Let me just go ahead and make this 100% so we can see it better. All right, perfect. Then The traveler enters the code into the keypad or the smart lock to unlock the locker. Makes a lot of sense. All right. Then the traveler places their belongings in the locker and closes the door. Right. Now here I have a question is, let me write that down. Can the user open the locker as many times as they want? All right. Ideally, they should be able to, right? So it's important that I should be able to open the locker as many times as I want to use it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set this to 100. Obviously, if it falls under my time frame. Next, the traveler keeps the code in a safe place. Now, I don't really know what it means, but I guess it's just that the user knows the code and retrieves their belongings from the locker when they are ready to leave the train station. All right. Now here the question is, what if the user forgets the code? Again, the same question again, right? And what if the user picks up the luggage after the pre-selected duration, right? Or maybe the better way to say this, picks up the luggage after the expiry of the duration, right? So maybe I set the locker for 4 hours, but what if I come and pick it up after 5 hours? What happens then? How is that edge case considered, right? These are all questions that I have. All right. And then finally, it says the traveler returns to the kiosk, which is quite weird, inputs their code to end the rental period and receive any remaining balance on their payment. So what's basically happening over here is that it's telling the user that they have to come and they'll get refunded for the remaining balance payment. Right now, this is going to create a lot of chaos because again, right, the traveler returning to the kiosk is such a stupid solution. Doesn't make absolutely any sense. They should just be able to pick up their luggage and then go away, right? That's how easy it should be, right? Users can cheat the system and they may not need to pay the remaining balance, and this ends up becoming sort of a flawed system, right? So how can we prevent a system like this? So now we have this user flow without an app. Now, what I also did was I went to ChatGPT and said, can you generate a user flow, assuming the whole service works only with a mobile app, right? So let's say there's no kiosk, right? Everything happens with a mobile app. How does that work, right? And we have this user flow. So here is the user flow with the mobile app, all right? So let's see. The traveler arrives at the train station and sees a signage for the locker rental service. The traveler downloads the mobile app from the App Store or the Play Store, right? Now, here the question is, can it be reserved beforehand, right? Maybe, yes, we can reserve it, right? The next one is the traveler opens the app and creates an account using their email address or a password, right? Now, the question here is, what about a phone number? Now, the thing here is that sometimes the SIM card may not work if you're traveling between countries, right? Because maybe a SIM card works in only one particular country. Let's say you're in the European region, so let's say you live in a particular country, that SIM will not work in another country, right? So it might not make sense to make a account with a phone number, but obviously that option should be there, right? Now, the other question I have is, why not allow users to use a guest account, right? Why do they have to create an account? Can they just use a service without using a guest account, right? Because if you look over here, pretty much without the app, you're not really creating an account everywhere. So if the service can work without an account, why not, just let them do it over here as well, right? So that's another question. Now, the traveler selects the train station they're at and sees a map of the available lockers. So I believe that, they probably come to the train station, or they're, on the way, in the train they're about to reach, and they see a map of the available lockers. So I guess that's fine. So there must be some sort of, search pattern. Then the traveler selects the size of the locker they need and the length of the time they want to rent it for. So again, these were the same question that I had before. So maybe I would probably rephrase this and I would say, I'll probably copy the same things over here. Per hour basis or combination of hourly tiers and how many sizes, right? It's the same set of questions, right? Let me just go that and make that 100%. Perfect. Then the traveler then pays the renters using a credit card or the mobile app payment service, whatever it is again. So here again, coming down to the payment solution, why prepayment? Maybe a deposit works instead. I don't know, but that's a question for this user flow as well, right? So I'm questioning every single step of the user flow. Okay, perfect. Great. Then, the app generates a unique code and displays it on the mobile screen. The traveler writes down the code or takes a screenshot of it. Now, there's no sense to like sort of, write down the code. I'm sure that there are better ways to have access to the code, right? Or takes probably a screenshot of it, which is also fine. It's there and it's going to be there in your photos. So that's good. Then the traveler locates the row of lockers and finds an available locker in the size of the say selected. Again, here as well, I would say the app should automatically provide the locker number. So I'm going to add that over here. I'm just going to say the app should provide the locker number, and that locker number is going to be assigned to this particular person. Then the traveler enters the code into the smart lock to unlock the locker. Makes a lot of sense. The traveler places their belongings and closes the door. Makes a lot of sense again. Right. I think here I had another question is, can the user open the locker as many times as they want? So it's pretty much the same question, but I'm just going to add it over here for the sake of consistency. Perfect. All right. The traveler keeps the code in a safe place and retrieves their belongings, right? What if the user forgets the code, right? So here again, the question I had here is, what if the user forgets the code and loses access to the mobile phone, right? Because the phone number the code is stored in the mobile device, and let's say they lost the mobile device, how are they going to get back access of it, right? Or let's say they forget the code, right? How do you solve for this situation, right? Now, there are also a couple of things, for example, what if the user picks up the luggage after the expiry of the duration? That's another question that we probably might want an answer to. I'm just going to go ahead and make this 100% as well. All right, that's fine. And then over here, the traveler keeps the code in a safe place and retrieves them belongings and all of those things. Again, same question. What if the user, forgets, loses access to the code? Maybe the user reaches out to the authorities to get it, but how is the identity verified if the user lost belongings, right? So for example, let's say I'm just lost mobile phone over here, right? So I have a lot of these questions. And finally, the traveler opens the app, inputs the code, and ends the rental period. Yes, of course, the users would cheat the system and not pay for the remaining balance. This is a flawed system. So again, basically repeating what we saw over here is that if you book for 4 hours and then you take out your, things for 5 hours, right? So you should be charged for that extra 1 hour, right? But then here it says that the traveler should input to the code to end the rental period, right? So that means the users can cheat the system and not pay for that additional 1 hour, right? So how are you going to solve this problem? So the thing, as you can see over here, is that although ChatGPT is helping us, there are a lot of questions that need to be answered, right? There are a lot of things that we need to focus on and understand more and try to remove a lot of these scenarios that the users might get into. We need to solve for all of these edge cases, right? And that's what we're going to do in the next part of the video, where we're going to solve it without an app and with the app, all right? And we're also going to look at metrics and see how we're going to track metrics. So this is going to be in the second part of the video. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment section down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. And I'll see you guys in the next video. So till then, take care and bye-bye.